Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to what promises to be a very exciting session brought to us by Amberjack on Are You Providing the Right Support for Your Gen Z Talent? So I'm going to hand now to Jenny and Cassie, who are going to take us through this, and then we're going to be welcoming a panel of Gen Z talent to help us understand this in a lot more detail. Cassie and Jenny, thanks so much for your time today. Over to you.
Thanks, Georgia. Just quick introductions. My name is Jenny Fitzgerald O'Connor. I'm one of the account directors at Amberjack, with a key focus and interest really as we build out our development offering. So really excited to be here today to talk to you about some of the findings from our research. Cassie?
Yeah, and I'm Cassie Sissons. I'm Chief Operating Officer at Amberjack, and like Jenny, really excited as we face into another cycle of attracting and assessing and onboarding the early talent into our organisations. How do we then look at the support that we provide them? What are they really looking for? And while Jenny and I have got some really interesting insights to share with you, I think one of the kind of key highlights of this session today is going to be actually listening to the voice of Gen Z, which, as much as Jenny and I would like to still be, and we are not. So let's talk to them and understand what they're looking for from employers and what their experiences are to kind of really enrich the way forward together.
Thanks, Cassie. So these will be our Gen Z panelists who Cassie will be doing some Q&A with towards the end of the session. But just to give you a bit of an overview in terms of our agenda, what we're hoping to cover today. As I said, great to see you all. Really excited to be here to discuss an area that I've got huge interest in personally, how we can support this generation of early talent to deliver on our expectations and also be equipped with the skills to ensure that they are developing to their full potential. Over the last month or so, really, we've done some research with the ISE and our Gen Z network to try and really delve a little deeper into some of the themes that we've been hearing about in relation to developing this generation of talent. And through our employer and candidate surveys, we've really been able to get some great data to highlight what you as employers are really looking for in your early talent as they come into your organizations, as well as what Gen Z are expecting as they enter the workforce. Certainly seems to be a lot of conversations in the market currently about what is expected from early talent as they join programs with you, and that not necessarily matching perhaps what you're seeing and experiencing once they join. So what we wanted to take some time really to do today is to better understand where these gaps are, what you're expecting, what the genuine concerns and desires of the Gen Zers are as they enter the workforce. We can't forget, I guess, that they're a generation hugely impacted by the pandemic, now facing into the economic slowdown, cost of living crisis. We need to really understand how we support them so that the programs that we design for them can really help them develop their potential to perform as best as they can when they join. So as I said, I'll talk you through some of that research, both from the research we did with the ISE, looking at what you as employers are looking for, as well as then moving on to talk about some of the data that we've seen from our Gen Z survey. And then Cassie will wrap up with some Q&A, which I'm sure will be really insightful into kind of playing back some of those themes that we've been seeing. So before we get started, I really wanted to just make sure that we're all on the same page when it comes to who Gen Z are. They're a generation that were born between the mid-1990s and early 2010s. They've witnessed, as we all know, that the pandemic, amongst other major events, and in terms of some of those core characteristics, I just thought it would be useful to play those out. Diversity being, the top of their agendas. Self-expression goes hand in hand, and they're a generation that are really valuing mental health and more prone, I suppose, some of the research is suggesting much more prone to mental health struggles and worries as they join, as they come into the workforce. And it's about understanding how we can really support them, not just through sort of tick box exercise in that space, but really intertwining everything that we do with that mental health lens. They were raised with social media and internet access. They stand up for what they believe in. and valuing money and financial stability. So I just thought that would be useful in terms of just setting the scene in terms for the generation that we're really talking about today. Jumping into the results from the poll that we did with the ISE, which hopefully many of you contributed to. This generation, as I said earlier, significantly affected by the pandemic. These are students, as we know, who didn't do GCSEs and A-levels in the usual way. The university lectures were put online for long periods of time. In many cases, I'm sure they felt isolated. They weren't able to take part in experiences to build that self-confidence and improve communication styles. And so really, it's no surprise that you all reported seeing trends to suggest that your early talent entering the workforce has been impacted by the pandemic. And there are clearly some trends in some of the soft skills that they're lacking, with 80% of you identifying that. So really, we need to look at what can be done to bridge these gaps as they enter the workforce, so that this generation are perhaps a little better prepared, but also importantly prepared in the areas that really matter to you as employers. And that's what we'll come on to in the next question. So what soft skills have you identified as being most important for your incoming early careers hires was the first question, or the first kind of insight that we asked you to share. And where we asked what soft skills are most important, I'm sure it's no surprise that the top 3 are building relationships, communication skills, and problem solving. Critical in being able to kind of successfully navigate these complex organizations, ever-changing and much more relevant perhaps than negotiation skills, presentation skills, and conflict management, which were much further down in terms of the priorities that you cited. So I don't know whether these skills become more important later on in someone's career as they get more experienced. These may be areas that you can focus on as your cohorts are moving into their final few months on their programs. But really at the beginning of the program, and even before they join, developing skills in relationship building, communication, and that problem solving, critical thinking is absolutely key. Moving on to the next question, we asked you as employers whether your programs have been adapted to support hybrid working. And in this question, 2/3 of you said yes. I wonder if the final third haven't had the time or budget really to prioritize the thinking on this one, because I'm sure, you know, with ever more organizations moving towards that hybrid working, I think this year's ISE development survey showed that 72% of employers expected graduates to work from home 1 or 2 days a week. And therefore, you know, we really need to ensure that there's a combination of in-person and virtual development touch points, but also, you know, what support is there for the early talent cohorts to work from home successfully, in terms of buddy support, in terms of mentor support, who can they reach out to when they're not surrounded by other peers, colleagues, to gain that that kind of learning through osmosis. You know, they do need to be supported, and what are we doing as organizations to make sure that that's happening? Jumping straight into the survey that we conducted with the Gen Z talent, this was to get a deeper understanding into what their expectations really were as they joined the workforce. What are their biggest concerns? What are their biggest worries? And where do they need more support, to kind of really understand whether these align with yours. Having enough experience and industry relevant skills was perhaps the biggest concern. Interesting in light of the recent ISE report, which stated over 50% of employers are now recruiting based on future potential rather than past experience. So it's interesting that, you know, has this message filtered down to the students? How can we ensure that they really understand that past experience shouldn't, in most cases, determine future success, especially when, you know, we're all moving to a place, or have moved to a place a few years ago, in terms of hiring for potential and developing based on future potential. And I'd also be really interested personally in putting a diversity lens on some of this data as well, to determine how this changes potentially when looking at candidates from a lower socioeconomic or ethnic minority background. We don't have this data to share with you today, but certainly something I'll be looking at to be able to identify how we can better support these students. Again, not just on day one when they enter our organisations, but throughout that attraction and engagement phase, and importantly, that post-offer and pre-joining phase, to make sure that sort of everyone's putting their best foot forward as they join your organisations on day one. There are also some really quick wins. Sorry, just going back, Jazz. There are also some very quick wins in terms of some of the concerns that are lower down in the feedback. You know, for example, knowing where I'll be based, joining a new environment, not knowing the technology. I think these are all things that can be addressed really successfully with a robust pre-boarding Keep Warm programme, so that students are confident in these areas and alleviate these concerns. There's no real reason why these types of more, I guess, transactional bits of information can't be highlighted and shared with graduates before they join, your early talent cohorts before they join. Moving on to the next question, what do you expect from an employer? So this is the next question that we asked our Gen Z network, and probably no surprise that this generation is really seeking support when it comes to well-being and mental health. So we've talked about, closely followed by cost of living support and then networking. I think, you know, more organisations are starting to provide opportunities for employees to be part of that safe and open culture, where people really feel that they can talk about their mental health. Having visible role models can really help this. Sharing experiences can be really impactful for students as they take their first steps on their career journey. But looking for opportunities as organisations to convey your culture as part of the attraction, assessment, that pre-joiner and induction phase will be really helpful in terms of placing that mental health and well-being, and the importance on that well-being and mental health. Third on the list, introducing to team members is an interesting one, and help with networking. Because I think that, you know, this is something that can start really successfully prior to joining, to build that engagement and rapport and help those new joiners to feel more confident. That can start really post-offer in that pre-boarding phase. And again, others, as before, should be relatively straightforward to put in place. You know, with the right training, a buddy system and mentor program is really invaluable to support the Gen Z generation as they're entering the workforce. They do need to understand, I'd say, you know, it's one thing to have a buddy and a mentor. They really need to understand their roles. The training is really key to make this a success. And then finally, that bottom point, you know, having a place where they can find all of their documents, where everything can be shared, where they can find their host materials, joining instructions, training guides, etc. So that this is all in one place is really critical, so that they can easily navigate and provide feedback, and also use the platform as a place to build rapport with their peers. In terms of the next question that we asked our Gen Z network, so how do you learn best? And, you know, to me, no surprise that over 80% of the respondents highlighted that they learned best in person. They far prefer that to the virtual learning. Clearly, you know, depends on your organization size, global, local. How is that training going to be provided for your employees, for your graduates? But it's interesting to see that they do want to come back in person. They do want to learn together. They do want to build that rapport with their cohort, with their peer group. Clearly a hybrid approach to that training and development and that learning is probably going to be what works best. And then in terms of the learning styles that they prefer, you know, it goes over 50%, that kinesthetic learning style. And for those of you like me who didn't really know what that word kinesthetic meant, it's really they prefer to learn by doing, and making sure that the workshops that you provide to your cohorts are really engaging, but also provide enough time to practice what they're learning in that workshop. So enough time to break out, to practice some of the skills that have been learnt in that safe environment will be invaluable in terms of then what they take back into their roles and day-to-day jobs. So that's kind of wraps up in terms of how they wanted to learn best. And then in terms of which types of training they thought would be most helpful to develop their potential. This was an interesting response here, because when we asked respondents this question, they learning to lead really came out on top. Yeah, for me, leadership, we're all running leadership programs, high potential programs. Graduate programs are typically future leader type programs, but leadership is probably not a key focus and priority right at the beginning, at least while initially on the graduate or early talent program. So you might want them to roll off as emerging leaders into a leadership role. But do we need to be clearer perhaps about the messaging regarding our programs, on what to expect, so that there isn't that disconnect? Managing relationships, on the other hand, problem solving, critical thinking, all areas that you also highlighted as really important for incoming early talent. So definitely some alignment there on the gaps that you've noticed and the areas that the graduates feel they need support with too. So I think then it's about how and when the support is provided. Do we need to be waiting until they start in employment to be giving the early talent, this cohort, these development pathways, or can we perhaps start a lot earlier? And would that then enable them to kind of hit the ground running when they join their induction and training programs, so that they can add more value on day one and beyond? So that's the kind of overview from the ISE employer poll and the Gen Z survey that we did. I'm going to hand over to Cassie, who's going to lead on get some of the questions going for our Gen Z panelists, which I'm sure you'll find really interesting to hear what they've got to say and how that aligns with some of the data and research that we've shared.
Thank you, Jenny. And I know that a lot of you will be very interested in some of the data points that did come through from both surveys that were shared, and we will make via the ISE. So yeah, as Jenny said, we're going to move the discussion on now to include 5 of our Gen Z or Gen Z, depending. I don't really know what we should say, Z or Z, but let's say Z for me. I'm English. Our panel. So we, as part of this kind of focus that Amberjack now have on the learning and development pathways for the early careers cohorts that our client organisations are onboarding, through the initial survey that we did, we identified what we thought would be really helpful for both us as an organisation and for our clients to put together a Gen Z advisory board. So a panel of individuals that are in that kind of target group at different stages of their education and career journeys that we can call upon for opportunities such as this, to talk to employers about what these people are looking for, to test ideas and concepts out with, and for our client organisations to have access to as well. And so from that survey, we've got quite a wide board of around 50 individuals that are very keen to be involved with these things, which is very exciting for us. And these are the 5 that are here today, all of which took part in that initial Gen Z survey that we put out to people. We've got a kind of bit of a mix of people at different stages of their kind of journey, if you like. So we've got Alice, who's just completed her A-levels and is now in her gap year before she decides what she does next, whether that be the university path, and we can talk about that, or whether it be the workplace. Jensen is currently studying at the University of Leicester. And then we have both Lily and Kostas, or Konstantinos, we call him Kostas, he works for us, who have both completed their education and now are in their kind of first real role organisationally, after having done different types of placement work and so on. And then we have Thomas, who's with us too at Amberjack on an apprenticeship. So very different kind of journey. And so what we'd like to do is kind of talk to all of you about some of the questions that were raised during the survey, and also getting your perspective on kind of what you want from employers and what your experiences have been to date. And felt the best way to do that really would be to kind of put Jensen and Alice together to kind of talk about those who are still in education, then getting Kostas and Lily's perspectives, those that are now in employment and have more exposure to what it's like to work, be part of a workplace, and what that development looks like. And Thomas, who's coming into the workplace on an apprenticeship, so we've still got that combined blend of learning and workplace opportunities, so what that's like for him. So that's how we're going to kind of run the next half an hour, and there'll be opportunity for you to ask them questions as well in the Q&A box. So I'm going to start with Alice. Where have you gone? Alice and Jensen. So obviously you're both still in education. Alice, you might go back into it, you might not.
Yeah.
Jensen, you are currently at the University of Leicester. So what are your, I guess, your expectations from an employer when you move into your first role? What do you think you're going to need from employers in your first work placement?
I think particularly for me, because I've just come from education, I've been in an environment with people all day long, 5 days a week. I think a kind of gradual move from that into the workplace would be quite good. So what I mean by that is face-to-face, not virtual, hands-on, like Jenny said earlier, with a mentor is really helpful. Just having that one person you can refer to, like a teacher or like your peers, so it's not overwhelming.
That's really helpful. And do you think that would be useful to have as once you've accepted an offer, before you're even on board with an organisation, to actually begin to understand from that mentor what it's going to be like coming into that workplace? It would, because some of our kind of students did say that would be really important to them to begin that journey earlier. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, definitely. I think maybe even starting it earlier to kind of like get a taste for the environment, because it's a completely different world, completely different. If you haven't had any experience in that kind of corporate professional environment, especially for me, because I've worked in retail, I haven't been exposed to that. So I think even having that beforehand would be even better. As much exposure as possible to it, really.
And is there anything that really would fill you with concern about going into a workplace from education, in terms of, the types of situations you might face into? What skills do you think you need to be kind of developed within yourself to be able to be, to deal with those situations and scenarios?
I think expectations, definitely. I think they're a lot higher, obviously, because you're in the workplace. Communicating skills, that's something that I think particularly my age group was affected with COVID, which is why face-to-face is so important for us, because it was the knock-on effect that we've had from the virtual learning has been massive. So definitely that, and also preparing us to use the software. I know it sounds basic, but we haven't learned any of that at school. I mean, I haven't anyway, and I know a large proportion of us haven't. And that's quite terrifying to me, especially. So I think that is something that would be really, really helpful.
Okay, that's great. Good, thank you. And Jensen, what about you? How are you feeling about, as you kind of getting towards the end of your degree, looking at employer opportunities? What are you looking for? What do you want to hear from them with regards to how they're going to take you on a journey, not just a job?
Well, right now I'm looking at placements for either summer internships next year or year in industry, do another one of them. And it's just nice to see the information I look for first is like where it's based, salary, and if it's like hybrid or all in person. I would like the option to go hybrid, like maybe do 1 or 2 days a week at home, but also if it's not there, it's not like a deal breaker or anything. But in terms of the onboarding process, at my last job, I was a market development representative. We did like a 2-week crash course, and all the modules that were online, you're watching a video, just weren't really like useful at all. All the ones you got things from were like the in-person, when you're with like either like your manager or someone who's already doing the job. We're just going through like the role playing, the scenarios are the ones everyone got the most from.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And so you'd be looking for much more of kind of an in-person trainer-led approach or mentor approach, as opposed to that virtual workshops. I think that's a really interesting point of view. And I think that definitely plays back to what we saw in that survey finding, the virtual versus the classroom piece. And what about the kind of learning and development pathway? So you've been onboarded. What would you be looking for to really then develop you in your career?
Personally, I just like to have either like a manager or like a mentor, someone a bit higher up, that you can just ask questions at any time of the day. Just ping them a message and be like, I don't really understand this, or I need help with this. Or even if you're struggling on like with your getting presentations together, like in having like that bank that was spoken about earlier of like templates almost, something you can access at any time.
Okay, that's great. And I can see we've got quite a lot of questions coming in actually already from the people that you can't see, guys, that are watching and listening to this. And I think what I'll do, if it's okay with everybody that's listening, is just get the perspectives from all of the panelists first of all, and then we can put the questions out to them as a whole, as a group, unless there's anything that I can't see that's directly focused on Alice or Jensen so far. So I'll move on, if that's okay, and just introduce Kostas and Lily to you all. Hello, Kostas and Lily.
Hiya, I'm Kostas. As Cassie said, I am working at the moment for Amberjack as the candidate management specialist, and I am a recent graduate. So yeah.
I'm Lily. I'm working as an assistant accountant with a packaging company at the moment.
Great. Well, thank you both again for joining us today, and you know, just adding to the discussion, which I think people are finding really interesting. So from both of your perspectives, you've been through your education, and I know that both of you had different kind of work, some work placement opportunities or work experience during that time, and then obviously are now in full-time employment. So could you tell me a little bit about, I guess, what you found most challenging coming into the workplace from your education, and the support that you were looking for? What did you get versus your expectations? So Lily, to talk to me a little bit about that. I don't know if you want to start, Lily, given I've got you on screen.
So what I found most difficult was my final year of university was COVID. So that transition from having to do everything completely at home in my own time sort of thing, like losing all of that sort of structure, then going into the workplace where it's like there's a lot more structure back to it. That was probably my biggest hurdle. Plus I did chemistry at university, so I intended to go into a lab environment. So it was a very different environment to an office where I currently work. So having someone, I got a personal mentor at my current work, and having that person has really helped me make that transition from what was going to be very physical work to very computer-based work.
So you've had your kind of your mentor assigned to you that you can go to at any point, and is that a kind of a proactive relationship? They come to you as well, or is it just they're there for you when you need them, or is there regular check-ins? How does that work for you?
It is a very proactive relationship. They are like, I work in a very small company, so they're also my direct boss. So they're the one that assigns me the work, but they also then check in to make sure that I understand the work, and like they'll give me further help if I need it.
And and looking kind of longer term about where you want to go in terms of your career, what development opportunities do you think would be helpful? Can you see, have you got line of sight of what they might be, or is that something you have to ask for? And what would you
so currently I have been offered to do some further study to then go into managerial accountancy. That is offered through the company, so they will pay for me to do that course.
So you're feeling actually that you're in your current environment, you've got the support that you need for the journey that you want to take, and also for the delivery that you're doing right now, you've got someone that you can go to. So that's kind of,
I think so.
satisfying your expectations.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Now, Kostas, what about you? Now, you work for Amberjack, so be careful. But no, I'm being, but truly, as we talk, be honest. To kind of, what are your expectations coming into the workplace as a graduate, and are those being met? What more could we be doing as an employer, and what do we need?
So I'm I'm gonna start with a few positive things that I've seen for now, especially with the onboarding process for this year. The onboarding process was very comprehensive, and it was very detailed, and I could clearly understand what all the departments in the company and what each department does and how they all connect and make this company that I joined Amberjack. And that was amazing to see, and it was like very clear to understand the opportunities of professional growth and potential areas for like shadowing. So again, as we're recent graduates, it might not be we might not have like a clear path, because yes, we do have a degree, but we're not 100% set. We just graduated, so we do come into a specific role, but we'd love to have a more overview of the whole of other different departments, so we can maybe, as I said, like shadow and understand them better. One challenge that I feel like I faced is when it comes to the expectations of the roles that are being presented to us. I feel like many companies do not often clearly outline the anticipated responsibilities for the employee in the job adverts. I feel like establishing clarity in the job expectation from the outset is crucial, and it is essential that in the job advert that is being articulated and the specific responsibilities and requirements are mentioned. I feel like that will enable a transparency, and it will allow potential candidates to assess their suitability and alignment to the position and to the company. Yeah,
I think that's really helpful, and I think that kind of sometimes, it is really hard to understand from a lot of employee communications that we all see what truly is the ask. What are people kind of explaining? How well are you explaining what the opportunity might be? How clear is that to a candidate during the recruitment and assessment process? And then what is the reality once you're onboarded? Does it match up to the reality? And often there's a big disconnect that we know and we see does lead to then retention issues within organisations. So, I think that point is really important about that, tying up what you're looking for to the actual experience that you're going to give somebody. And I think that's really helpful. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you.
We'll come back to you with some of the questions that are popping up. I think there was one just for you actually, just there. Let me just double check. I think it was. I've got some in chat and some in Q&A, so apologies. Question for you, Kostas. How many job adverts did you look at when you were applying for jobs, and what stood out as a good example?
So I started looking last September, so I did look at quite a few when it comes to graduate schemes, but I feel like for graduate schemes, most job adverts were really focused on the future development in the role, which I understand, because again, it's a graduate role. We need to have a focus on like our future. But at the same time, I didn't really see a lot of adverts actually mentioning details of the responsibilities, that the daily tasks that I would have to do in the company in that job role. And I would love to see that more, so that because it would be easier for me to understand that, yes, I am a good fit to this company, or maybe, yes, I agree with the future plan that's being mentioned, but I'm not going to be able to do those daily tasks because that's not, like, for example, how I work.
Yeah, okay, good. Thank you. Thank you. Thomas, last but certainly not least. So Thomas is representing the apprenticeship population, if you like, from our Gen Z panel. And quite recently, been in the workplace for a while now, but quite recently begun your apprenticeship. So would you like to just give a little bit of an intro as to why you chose an apprenticeship route, Thomas, and what you need from an employer to help balance that learning that you have from a college perspective, and as well as being kind of a contributor to the workforce, and what support you expect and need and are looking for from that.
So hi everyone, I'm Thomas. I've been doing an apprenticeship here at Amberjack for about 8 months now, and I've come straight out of school into an apprenticeship. So of course, everyone coming out of school, their first instinct to do an apprenticeship is, oh, you're getting a salary alongside doing your work. But I think more for me, it was the hands-on and practicality side of being able to apply your learning into the workplace, which would allows me to gain a deeper understanding of what I am learning and why I'm learning it. And it is more interesting than being sat in a classroom and having that work, not really know what you're using it for. And I think for me, that is the main reason I chose an apprenticeship. But in terms of balancing the work, we do have quite a high demand of work, especially the work side of things at Amberjack at the moment, being in peak season. Balancing the work, we do have a good resourcing team, so we get dedicated hours to do our apprenticeship work, which I think is very useful. So any employers who do offer out apprenticeships, I think that time being put aside is crucial for us to have, because it does allow us to plan ahead and then be more efficient with that work we do, also allowing us to have more kind of time to complete the actual work we need to do for our business. So yeah, that'd be my take on that.
That's really great. And I think one of the things that came out in the survey, and we've had an actual question from one of the participants in today's webinar, is your perspective on how employers should support apprentices to develop resilience and mental health support, kind of to deal with the pressures of work. Do you have a perspective on that, Thomas?
Yeah, I do think obviously my kind of age group coming out of school, big chunks of it being virtual, not being in classroom, there naturally will be a lot of nervousness around going into the workplace, which I found here at Amberjack we did have. I was offered a lot of support and encouragement. Everyone was very friendly, offered advice. So in terms of that mental health side of things, I think you can get everyone in the company maybe involved in that. It doesn't have to be something specific, just everyone being friendly, offering encouragement allowed me to settle in a lot more quickly. So I thought that's a very good thing.
Yeah, and the rest of you guys, because well-being and mental health support came out quite loud and clear as a key theme from everybody that responded to the survey, from a Gen Z perspective, that they wanted an employer to give them that support. How important is that to all of you? Do you feel that that's one of the critical things that you'd be looking for to be happy and settled in the workplace? Is that focus on that important? I think you're all on mute at the moment, so do come off as I'm posing questions out to you as a panel. That'd be good. Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely important. If you see a lot of like the older generation where it's like you've got to work until you can't work anymore. It's like I don't want to work like that.
So when you say that, what sort of work-life balance, workplace balance, is it that hybrid model? Is it is it taking time away from the job to have some very specific development and stuff? What is that? So what does that look like for you?
So for me, having a hybrid work model really does help have that sort of balance, because then some days a week I'm at home and my day ends exactly when the work day ends. There's no commute. And it's like that, having that really does make a difference for me.
And has anyone else on the panel got a perspective on that well-being, mental health support?
I would say that specifically for this generation, we do care a lot about the mental health aspect of every role and the healthy work-life balance. And I feel like one main point that we all look at, or maybe me, I don't know, I'm not going to speak about everyone, that on the job role, that it is clearly communicated and it's transparent that the company stands on flexibility and remote work. I would love to see more, not only remote work, but flexibility when it comes to your hours, not just 9 to 5:30, but yeah, you can work from home. But for example, like if you finish your work earlier, for example, at 3, you can take some time off. And then when you get the time the same day, you can come back and continue the rest of your work, the rest hours, or like you can push them back to another day. That's something that I feel like really, like, it's just like, I feel like it would allow us to have a more like work-life balance, but without affecting our work, because that's also like, okay, I can say I'm not going to work today. That's healthy work-to-life balance. But I feel like going in, doing your daily task, and you see that you have a few hours available, then just you can go back and do what you want and like get your time back, and then you can continue your work later. So yeah.
Okay, thank you. And then Jensen and Alice, you know, without being in full-time employment yet, you know, obviously you have had some work experience, you're still in your educational journey. What's kind of what that kind of prospect of going into the workplace, having studied part of your time remotely as well, you know, based from home during COVID, being in an office environment, having that kind of commute, how does that feel to you? How appealing is that or not? And what are you looking for from a kind of flexibility perspective to help drive, I guess, loyalty to the organisation? You end up working.
That's more motivating for me to be able to go into the workplace, and like Costas was talking about, separating work from lifestyle at home, being able to go to work and then come home and not have to think about work. I think that's really important, and that it's not constantly on your mind. I mean, it will be without a doubt, obviously, naturally, but being able to have like an obvious like separate from the both, and an obvious break. And Costas also did talk about how like changing your hours and getting a certain amount of tasks done in a week, for example, and as long as you finished it, being able to change your hours. I think whilst that would work for a lot of people, personally that wouldn't work for me because I need structure. So I think it depends where you've come from. So if you've come from uni, you have lectures at different times, seminars at different times, so you're more flexible. But coming from a school environment where there's structure from 9 to 3, that works best for me. So I think whilst that would work for some people, it's down to who you are individually to create that balance.
I think that's really important reflection, because you've kind of got preferred learning styles, haven't you, when you are in education, and then you've got the reality of being in a job working for an employer, and sometimes that's a completely different prospect. So as employees, we need to kind of reflect and consider on how young people coming into the workplace, we're offering those opportunities. How do we support them given their accustomed styles of learning and potentially preferences to the way that they learn? So I think that's a really good addition. Thank you, Alice. Jensen, is there anything you'd like to add to the conversation?
Yeah, so like Costas was saying about moving the work hours, for me, I liked working 8 till 4:30 instead, just so I get to miss all the rush hour traffic. Still got the same like working time, just able to move it. I really like that flexibility. And then of course if there's a meeting later on in the day, then you just do the normal 9 till 5:30 where I was working. So that was really important to me, being able to move that hour.
Okay, there's that bit of flex and understanding of people's work-life balance needs. And I had a question earlier on in the session, quite early on actually, from somebody asking all of you really how we can best drive loyalty with you as a generation. So you want to stay with an employer, so what are you really ultimately looking for to be loyal to your employer?
I think for me that would definitely be seeing ways we're able to progress within the business, being offered maybe other things to do, being given additional responsibilities, not necessarily having to do with work side of things, but maybe work events, things like that. But yeah, definitely seeing that you'll be able to progress. For me, like on progression of on completion of an apprenticeship, what is there to go on to? Seeing that for me, that would definitely make me really value the company and see that they're trying to have the best for their people, which in return would I'll give my loyalty for.
That's great. Anybody else want to add to that?
On top of that, I would say the actual environment at the company. If it's like a toxic, uncomfortable environment, you're not going to want to stay there. Whereas if it's somewhere where you feel like you can make friends and it's a much more nice and friendly place, then yeah, I'd be much more likely to stay there.
Great. Good. Okay. So it's culture is very important to you, an inclusive, supportive, friendly,
yeah, definitely
place to work. Any additions from any of you guys before I look at what other questions are sitting in the chat?
I would like to add also just performance reviews and mainly feedback sessions.
Yes.
With clear development plans.
Yes.
And clear plans of what skills are needed for the role that I need to develop, and what can I do to develop, and what the employer, the company, as a company, is able to help me develop these skills. What learning resources are they able to provide? That will prove to me that the company is actually trying and they want me there, and that's basically proving that. So I will be loyal to a company like that.
That's great. Thank you. Okay, I'm just looking through the Q&A and the chat. I think, Jenny, you answered a question already.
Yeah, there was one to Costas from John, I think, going back in relation to the feedback that you were sharing, Costas, in terms of the flexibility. I think, John, but yes,
yeah, I think that's
balance.
the point. Yeah.
How worried would you be about asking that sort of thing, Costas, in a role in an organization?
Me personally, I wouldn't be worried at all. It's something that's really important to me. So I would, if I have not had the chance to ask while I'm doing the application, then I would ask at the interview for sure. I would ask, what is the life to work balance? What can I, like, why will I be able, like, to change my hours? So I would ask everything. I wouldn't.
Yeah. Okay.
Would anyone else feel uncomfortable about asking?
I think that kind of thing definitely depends on what how confident you are as a person. For me, I would also ask about that before I do go and get the job role full time. But I think I would feel a bit uncomfortable asking for that. I'm not too sure, so I can't really pinpoint a reason for you, but it's just not something I wouldn't be too confident in asking. Maybe that being because I've been in school used to following a strict set of rules, and I'm not used to kind of having that flexibility yet. I'm not sure, but yeah, that definitely would be something I'm not totally confident in asking.
You weren't a rebel at school then? You
no,
followed the rules.
No.
But as an employer, kind of, I think it's that's a really good addition, though, because as an employer, when we're looking at bringing people in and supporting people from all different types of entry points into the early careers programs, people are coming, with different personalities, different ways of communicating, and different experiences. So building confidence in the workplace at a very, just as part of that onboarding into your kind of, you're getting established in your role. So what skills you need to be able to challenge in a meeting, or but push your point of view forward if you feel like you've got something important to say or something that's important to you. So I do think building out those soft skills that we talk about is important journey, even if it's kind of not really seen like that because it's not a physical piece of kind of training collateral. It's not a kind of technical skill, but actually it's an important way to ensure that you have a voice in your organisation. So I think that's a really important addition, Thomas. Thank you.
There's a couple of other questions that have just appeared, Cassie. What training have you received in education or work to develop your resilience? I think that's a really interesting question. Does anyone want to jump in on that one? Anyone received any training that they feel helps develop their resilience?
Currently at uni, I'm doing a professional skills module, so it's all about how to act in your work environment, what you should be doing, like on daily tasks, and how to get comfortable with all this software as well. So that's I think quite good in terms of the onboarding process.
Right.
just lots of questions just
Oh
appeared.
yeah, we've got lots of questions coming in now.
Anyone else got anything to add to the resilience before we move on to the next question? Okay. Shall I pick another one?
Yeah, carry on. Yeah.
There's a question that's come in that is really fascinating, and I wanted to, it'd be interesting to get your perspective as students and recent joiners into the world of work. To what extent should the organisation adapt to you as Gen Zers coming through, and to what extent do you feel then you should adapt to the organisation that you're joining? Do you have any views on that?
Well, I feel like that we as Gen Zers have to respect that that things have been a certain way in the workplace for a long time, and it's not going to be an easy fix to accommodate our needs as such. But then at the same time, I do think a certain course of action could be taken just to give us that kind of ease us in gently into the role, which I think they did very successfully here at Amberjack, kind of recognizing that we were used to virtual learning, not used to having these face-to-face interactions about things of such high importance. So I think there needs to be a fine balance in what we as employees expect and what employers do offer us.
Yeah, really interesting debate. I think, you know, how do we meet and manage those expectations and those gaps that you're expecting? Sorry, Cassie.
Yeah, just looking at a couple of others. I'm mindful of time. We've got a few minutes left. There's a few questions. We'll try and get through them. Sorry, guys, panel, more coming your way. Stick with us, keep your resilience going. For those of you that are in the workplace now, has the hybrid working model impacted your ability to access more senior colleagues in the business that you're working for, to develop those buddy relationships? Are those people accessible to you? So if you've bothered to come into the workplace, for example, on the day that you're working, are those people there that you need to be able to learn from or talk to? How's that working?
I feel like it really depends on the company, because at the moment in Amberjack, it's quite a very open relationship. So like at any point, if I have any question or if I want to ask any questions, I know that I am able to, for example, you, Cassie, I can just message you on Teams. I know that there is that there. But yes, it is a lot easier in the office, face to face. I'm not gonna disagree with that. It is a lot easier in the office, but I feel like it really depends. When it comes to virtually, it really depends on the company culture. Yeah.
Okay. But I think, you know, the having access to people, whether it be face to face, you know, or virtually, because obviously not everyone's going to be in on the same day, but I think it's, you know, we certainly, you know, would want to ensure that the days that our teams are in the office, that you do have that access to people physically. You know, otherwise you're there working unsupported, aren't you? So it definitely is a balance. Another question I'd like to pose to you guys. We've been asked, if you're to get a job offer, what's the one thing you'd like to see from the employer between receiving that offer and your first day? What would you like from them to be work ready? Anybody want to take that?
I think like informing you on what your first day will be like, because it's the most nerve-wracking thing in the world, and informing you on what you'll be doing to begin with, how that training process will work and how that will lead into working for that company, and just to kind of get a taste for things, really.
Great. And as part of that onboarding process, I can ask another question that's been asked at the same time. While you're waiting to join the company, how would you want to be communicated with? Text, social media, emails? What's the best way for you?
I think this is different for everyone. I think as a generation, we are used to texting. I think most people will agree on here that everyone texts more than calling. I think calling would actually be better, because when you're going into the work environment, that is what you're doing most of the time, which is nerve-wracking for me. Even to me, it's scary, because you're not used to talking to lots of different people in one day. So yeah, definitely that. Definitely calling.
Anybody got a different point of view? Lily?
I would prefer emails, because then I have all of the information written out that I can then refer back to in the future when it's needed.
Okay,
Tends to be, as opposed to text where it tends to be smaller. I would prefer emails where it can be long formats.
Okay, good, thank you. Thomas, we had a question coming back to you. Can you give examples for when that was specifically provided for you at Amberjack, your learning journey, Thomas? I think you talked about how you felt that was supported. So examples.
Yeah, so I'll go back to even as early as my first couple of weeks with Amberjack. I was joining a team with another new apprentice as well. So automatically you're thinking, oh, that team might not have too much experience, but we joined the team. We had a great client partner and a few others working on that team who we'd shadow, and they'd almost mentor us, providing us with all the knowledge and basic knowledge we need to be able to do part of that job. And I thought like that, how they would keep showing us more and more as they'd understand that we understand what we're doing, and then they'd keep developing the complexity of the work we get until we were competent at doing all the jobs required to do. So I thought that was probably the best time we were offered that support.
Great, thank you. Got a couple of other questions asking actually about going back, looking at kind of during the kind of before you join a company, when employers are trying to get your attention to make you join them. What are the key messages you're looking for? I think one of our participants is saying that video is a go-to for the Gen Z population. So what jumps out, what grabs your attention from employer content perspective, and what messages are you looking for? Don't know if anybody particularly wants to take that one. I think you're still on screen, Thomas, but you don't have to answer that. We can get someone else.
Yeah, I can take that one. So I think for me, the thing that stands out the most, going back to what Costa said earlier, actually, is having that job description and being told exactly what you're going to do. Because I can't imagine there being anything worse, not saying I know from experience, and going into a job and it being nothing like you expected, and it being a big shock to the system. So for me, when I was looking through apprenticeships on I believe it was the government website, I found that Amberjack's was very, very well thought out, described almost perfectly what I'd be doing sorry, on a day-to-day basis. So for me, yeah, the most important thing is definitely the job description, or the job description as you like.
Okay. So actually it was the written word rather than video that appealed to you, because I think the question.
For me,
okay.
For me, it's easier to follow. I can refer back to it quicker and not have to go through a whole video again. But that is just my opinion.
Good. Thank you so much. I think we've got like a minute left, and I think that's probably not enough to get a decent enough response from the couple of questions that are outstanding. But I think they're on a similar vein. It is about kind of what you're looking for from recruitment communications from an employer. So hopefully the audience have had some satisfactory responses from a very hard-working panel today, guys. Thank you so much for that, and thank you to everybody. If you want to get more connections with our Gen Z panel and use them for your own kind of polls and questions, please do get in touch with Jenny or I, and we'd really be happy to kind of help facilitate those kinds of conversations, or us to talk a bit more about what we can offer you as employers to support the L&D journey as you bring people into your organisations at that entry point. But I'm surely you'll agree that the guys have worked extremely hard today, and the voice of youth is sometimes far more interesting than ours. But thank you so much, guys.
We did have some quick key takeaways, I think,
Yes,
given
yes.
time, and everyone's obviously dashing off to their next meeting. I know the deck will be shared. I mean, really, you know, thank you very much. Really interesting questions. In terms of, I think one of the key things I wanted to leave with was just that the learning and development journey and the support of this talent doesn't have to just start on day one when they join you as that early talent cohort. It can start way before that, through that kind of pre-boarding and onboarding, but also in the way that you attract and engage with your early talent to ensure that they kind of feel supported, offering them that development, you know, right from school through university and beyond. So we'll share the deck, I'm sure, through the ISE, but thank you very much for coming and all your time. Hopefully you found it a great session, and look forward to speaking to you all soon.
And panelists, there's lots of love coming through on the web chat.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can all see. So thank you. That's brilliant. Thanks, ISE.
Very much.
And a final thank you from the ISE to Amberjack, to Cassie and Jenny, and to all this wonderful panel, and to the audience for such an amount of amazing questions as well. So we'll be sharing the recording, the slides, and lots more information after today's call. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a brilliant afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Georgia.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.